So I am so excited. My good friend, colleague, Michelle Holleman is joining us today. We have been trying to get this topic in. She has done a podcast with Dr. Rob on what parents need to know about porn and gaming and everything. So I think there's a lot of confusion or minimizing or just not understanding about, what parents need to know. And she's done a number of presentations to organizations, churches, wherever there are parents gathered. And, we wanted to invite her to come on this platform. And Eddie Caparucci, who normally does the third week, is on vacation with his wife, which I said, yay, good for him. So he'll be back in October, but we had this window of opportunity. So I invited Michelle and she was available to join us. So I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. She works in North Carolina, and we were just talking about that a moment ago, but she is one of the therapists who shows up regularly for Dr. Rob's peer supervision group. And so she's one of the people that when people are looking for help in North Carolina, she's one of the people that is on my very short list of qualified professionals to refer to. So I love working with Michelle. She really gets this work and also really cares about her clients and wanting to do the best for them. So with all of that, Michelle, I'm going to shut up. I'll let you introduce yourself, but then let's talk about, this really important issue so that parents aren't ignoring warning signs that they probably need to be paying attention to.
Yeah. So, hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I am licensed in North Carolina to treat any kind of addictions. I specialize in behavioral addictions, sex and porn addiction, gaming, internet. I also do substance abuse, one of my specializations. And I went to college at Charleston. I was talking about that before we started rehearsing. So I really love traveling. I love my family. I love scuba diving, a little personal stuff. But recently, in the last year and a half, when I started my private practice called Life Healing Counseling, I'm located in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am located near one of the largest public high schools in North Carolina, and suddenly parents started coming in because their teenagers were getting caught with pornography on their school-issued computers. So that's kind of how I fell into this sort of specialized teenagers and kids with pornography. And what I realized was that most people weren't really understanding what was going on. So I really dove in, did a ton of research. And I also realized there's not a ton of information like there should be. So I tried to compile it. I put together a presentation and started doing it all in my community to churches and schools and principals and religious leaders, parent groups, anyone who would listen. And people were pretty surprised at the information that I found. It's all scientifically verified. There's nothing I'm making up. This isn't my opinion. So that's kind of what I'm going to talk to you about today. And also I'm going to talk a little bit about gaming, because I found that if kids are gaming, they're coming across this stuff anyway. I'm also going to talk to you guys about the law, which is very important to know in your state. And if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'll talk to you about how to help your kids, how to spot it, and how to talk to your kids about general sex stuff. And hopefully that'll help you kind of become a little more comfortable, to empower you to communicate better with your kids. Okay, so should I just start, Tammy, to start talking about it? So one of the things that I know about the neurobiology of the brain, and that's my favorite part, is the neuroscience of what I do. I love studying the brain. I'm kind of a nerd, neuroscientist. What we know is that what wires together fires together. So what that means is that if kids are doing one thing all the time, like gaming, and they're doing something else, that they usually complement each other and they just kind of wire together and fire together. So all those neural pathways just kind of blend together and create one big neuropathway, and things join up and link together, and everything just kind of happens simultaneously. So what I found is gaming starts usually before any child discovers pornography, because introduced super early, right? We give our kids tablets when they're very young. You see toddlers all the time doing these little simple games. You know, parents want their kids to maybe be a little bit quiet during dinner, so we hand them a tablet with a little baby game on it. That's gaming. And gaming seems to provides kids with the same dopamine, which is what chemical is being released in addiction. So all addiction is dopamine based. It's the chemical that makes us feel good. And all process addictions are actually an addiction to the chemical dopamine. So when we talk about any addiction like sex, even drugs, alcohol, all that, they're all part of a dopamine addiction. And that dopamine creates very powerful neuropathways. So one thing about gaming is, as kids get older, they are starting to be introduced to things like streaming sites. And you've seen these on YouTube, where people will start to play games online, and kids are on YouTube watching people play games. That's called streaming. And that can become monetized. So it's kind of their first introduction to the idea that they can start making money online for a lot of kids. They watch other people like YouTubers making money online at a very young age. So if they're gaming, they're thinking, wow, if I start playing games and I get better and I can just make a video of myself doing it, put it online, start a YouTube channel. And most parents are pretty comfortable with their kids using TikTok, Instagram, and even YouTube to monetize themselves. They don't really think about it. And monetizing is very powerful because it seems pretty harmless, and kids get paid through PayPal, and parents are usually like, sure, I'll set up a PayPal account for you. So here's the thing about gaming. Gaming is incredibly addictive. We have a lot of research that shows pictures of the brain that shows that how much dopamine is really released and why. All parents have really, at this point, heard of a game called Fortnite. Fortnite was the first kind of red flag. It was in the media a couple of years ago for being known to have been designed to be addictive, allegedly. The reason Fortnite is pretty addictive is because there's no game over. It's about quests, and quests are never completed. There's no completion to the game. There's no, I won, it's over. It just keeps going. And a lot of games aren't solitary. They're worldwide players. So there's player interaction, and there's talking in real time to other players. When we get our kids those really cool headsets that they wear with a microphone, they are talking to kids all over the world. We're hoping they're kids. Usually they are. And they create friendships and relationships, and these are real relationships. And they're talking in real time to different players all over the world. There's a very quick reward system in gaming. It's called leveling up. You can get new powers like courage, intelligence, healing. And the more you play, the more powers you get, and you level up, which also not only happens quickly, but allows you to continue playing longer. There's a thing called a variable ratio that happens. And it's like a slot machine in Vegas. It's this idea that knowing if you play long enough, the reward is going to come. So if a kid is playing longer and longer and longer, eventually they know they're going to get a level up, or they're going to get a new power, or something exciting is going to happen. They just have to keep on playing. Eventually it's going to happen. Gaming is also a very emotional experience. For kids who play things called MMORPGs, which, if you don't know that, it's called a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. It's something like World of Warcraft or Sea of Thieves. Kids create these characters, and they're really intricate. Kids are having these very emotional experiences with their characters. They have characters have relationships with other people's characters. They have funerals, there are betrayals, they have friendships, rites of passage. And these characters and these relationships can continue for years and years and years. World of Warcraft has almost 8 million players worldwide last time I looked, which was a while ago. So there are lots of these different games, but they're very intricate. And again, they go on these quests, so there's no ending to this. In these games, there are real world rewards. There are actually real world, I'm getting tongue-tied. There are real world life tournaments for some of these games. They have conventions where people can go and have actual competitions in the real world and win money. You can go and have, there are Minecraft competitions. Minecraft, again, seems harmless, but there really is a lot that goes into that. And again, you're creating characters, there's no real ending, there are quests. So you can actually interact with people from your game in the real world and also, again, monetize it, because people who become famous Minecrafters, they have monetized it and become their whole career, and they put it on YouTube and they get sponsors. And again, it's possible to make a living from being a gamer. Another thing about gaming is it can continue to evolve even if you're not playing. So when our kids are supposed to be doing schoolwork, especially now that it's digital for a lot of people, there's a sense of what kids, the kids are calling FOMO, fear of missing out. So because gaming is worldwide and kids aren't just playing like in North Carolina or just in California or wherever we live, there are different time zones. So while we're asleep, the kids are still playing these games, which means that if you're asleep or if you're supposed to be at school, you're not playing. So that means you're missing out on whatever's happening with your characters or with your gaming. So the kids are often bullied. They're often made to feel guilty, and if they're part of a team, if it's a team play game, they're required to be accountable to other people and how much time they're putting into this team. So it's a very psychologically interesting thing to watch, because kids will give up other things that are important to them in order to put more time into their game. Giving up things that are important to you, like sports, friends, hobbies, that's a huge indicator that something is going on and something is not okay. The other thing that gets introduced through these relationships and through gaming is eventually what I'm finding is happening is it starts very, very innocently. But eventually what happens is someone somewhere in the world says, hey, by the way, have you seen the games on this site? And they will be directing your child or a friend of a friend or somebody to a site that is for games, but also has some other stuff on it. So that stuff is stuff that you probably don't want your kid to really see at all. And that's kind of where we run into sexualized material. So I don't know if there are any questions yet, or if Tammy has anything she wants to add before we get into the pornography stuff, but.
No questions yet. I'm going to invite any of you that are joining at the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. Feel free if you have questions. This is fascinating, and I really do appreciate that you are picking apart, and like when you're using the jargon, you're like going back and saying this is what, because I was like squinting, what does that one mean? But like
all this.
Yeah, and I can understand how kids, innocently, and even parents innocently go, oh, it's just this, without understanding that, oh, there's way more. So this is very useful. Keep going.
Just wait. Okay. Well, here's where it gets really good. So we have kids that are gaming, and they'll tell you they're gaming, and they are. Your kids are gaming, and most of all of our kids are gaming. And you're thinking, I'm doing a great job. I'm a good parent. I'm limiting my kids' time. I'm watching what they're doing. I am absolutely have all these blockers. I'm using this. I am being a responsible parent. And that is exactly what every single parent whose kid winds up in my office says. And this is part of our problem as parents. I am a parent. I have 2 teenagers, And I have had these conversations with my children. I had no idea, I will admit, for a period of time what they were doing. And this is part of my discovery. So part of the issue that I have is that the kids are not the problem. Kids that come in my office will readily admit, I have a gaming addiction. I have a pornography addiction. I have a drug addiction. Kids today have a very different idea of addiction, and they understand that it's not as stigmatized to them as it is to my generation. They have been blessed to have celebrities and have grown up seeing what happens, and it's much more publicized. So they feel a little more comfortable talking about it. The issue is with me, with us, and the shame lies a little bit more often with us, with me. So my first reaction is, this isn't my kid. My kid's not doing this stuff. I will say that that is the most common reaction, because my child's a good child, and they're good kids, I promise. The statistics show us that the average age a child is first sees pornography is 9 years old. That's average. So that means there are kids younger than 9, and there are kids a little older than 9. 9 years old is about the age that most children I talk to have seen it. It's also the age that most adults that I treat for sex and porn addiction have reported seeing pornography. So even in the past, around age 9 to 11 is about where my adult clients report seeing it. The other statistic is 90% of children ages 8 to 16 have already seen pornography in some form. So 9 out of 10 children ages 8 to 16. That's really high. There are much more than 100,000 websites that offer pornography out there. And solicitation is very common, being solicited for sex. But when we think of being solicited for sex, kids being solicited, we really think of it as this really scary old dude who's creepy looking, and he's, wearing this crazy overcoat, and he's this crazy creepy guy on Dateline, and that's who's reaching out to our kids to be solicited. And the reality is that's not who we really need to be afraid of all the time. The reality is that a lot of people who are reaching out to our kids are other kids. And the next statistic is the one that scares me the most. The largest consumers of porn in the world are 12 to 17-year-old boys. That's the largest consumers of porn. They aren't 50 to 60-year-old men. They're not 45. They are 12 to 17-year-old boys. That's who's watching the most porn. The easiest way to find pornography is through social media. It's through Twitter. It's through Instagram. It's through Snapchat. It's through YouTube. There's a rule that, I don't know if parents know this, but I learned it pretty quickly. It's called Rule 63. It means anything can be turned into pornography. Absolutely anything. And when we think of pornography, we're thinking of things like on Pornhub, like actual pornography. But the reality is that most kids, especially younger kids, are watching cartoon porn, like manga, which is a Japanese form of pornography. There's pornography about Scooby-Doo, SpongeBob, Dora. Anything can be made into pornography, and it has been. So when kids search out Scooby-Doo on Google, let's say they misspell it a little bit, it takes them right to a Scooby-Doo pornography site, possibly. It's very prevalent. It happens a lot. The other thing.
Before you go, so somebody asked about, so do you recommend, do you have a recommendation for protection sites to put on my son's iPad? Will it block the stuff he should not be seeing for a 9-year-old? And I've talked to a lot of people. It'll be interesting to hear what you say, because like the people, like the kids know how, and even, porn addicts know how to get around the blocks. So what are your thoughts on blocks?
All right. So yeah. So blockers are great. Do I think they work? Sometimes. I mean, I think our kids are a lot smarter than us. I know they are, actually. If they want to see porn, they're going to see porn, and you're not going to stop them with blockers. That's the reality we live in. I think blockers are fantastic if your children are willing to abide by them. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And the biggest problem isn't your house. The biggest problem is that your cousins don't have blockers and the neighbors don't have blockers. And by the way, your kid doesn't need the Wi-Fi because they can go into their tree house or down the street and they don't have to be on Wi-Fi. They can use their data. So this is what I'm kind of segueing into is it's not about blocking, it's about education. So this is where we get into kind of the uncomfortable stuff. But when we talk about porn and we talk about pornography and what we don't want our kids seeing, traditionally parents like me have taken this very moral value kind of system and way of talking about it to our kids. Like, it's bad, we don't want you watching it, here's why. And we've also, but when we do that, we're not really explaining why we don't want them watching it. We're just saying, you don't want to see this. It's not for you. You're too young. And our kids are like, well, what do you mean? And it kind of makes it more taboo in a way. And we can say, oh no, not my kid, your kid. Trust me, your kid. So yes, your 9-year-old with the iPad, very possible. I hope he's that 10%, but I don't know. So we have to not make pornography about morals and values. You can have those morals and values. Most parents do. But it won't stop them from trying to find and explore things we don't want them to and being exposed to this. We have to educate them. And these kids are good kids. My clients, my teenage clients are presidents of their high school. They're valedictorians. They're captain of the football team. They go to church. They are singing in this choir. I mean, these are the smartest, most wonderful straight A, amazing students you will ever sports. I mean, these are the greatest kids. They're all going to college. These are fantastic kids. Not one of them is a bad kid. These are good kids. So we can't think of it as like the bad kids are showing them this. The bad kids aren't showing them anything. It's usually the really great kids are showing other really great kids. And we have to understand how things are different. There aren't any magazines. There's instant access 24/7. We can't watch our kids 24/7. Everything is very portable, very private. Online friends are real friends. Please stop telling our children that those aren't your real friends. They're just online. These are actually real relationships that our children have formed with people all over the world. They know them. We may not understand it, but they actually have real connections with these people, and they share very intimate, private things with these people. Even if they've never met them in person, they video chat with them. So it's just different than the way we met friends. And we may not think it's as good as the way we did it, and we may not like it or get it, but it's very real to them. Especially now in the age of COVID, where our kids aren't allowed to kind of just go play with whoever they want to. These real connections are very important. I actually encourage parents to meet their online friends and meet the parents of their online friends. My kids have online friends, have for years, and I organized a little FaceTime party where her little group of friends, we all met on FaceTime and waved and, hi, how are you doing? Nice to meet you. And that way I knew exactly, and I still know exactly who she's talking to. I know the parents, and we talked about things like this. What games are they playing? What are they looking at? What are they really doing? How are they doing in school? Are they still doing other things outside of school? And we, as parents, in communication on a group text. So, hey, so-and-so is having a hard time, or so-and-so feels like she's getting bullied. And we kept in touch as parents and became friends as parents, which helped our kids' relationships grow online in a really healthy way. So I encourage you to get to know your kids' parents online and at least understand a little bit more about them. Okay, so before I get to how do you stop this, something very, very important. You must understand the laws in your state and explain the laws of your state to your kids, especially teenagers. In North Carolina, where I live, any film, photograph, negative slide, or other medium visual description or electronic visual image, computer or computer generated image or sound recording, which is of a child under 18 or appears to be a child engaging in a sexual act. That is how child pornography is defined. This includes Snapchats, or snaps, as the kids call them, or selfies. Snapchat, which most of the kids are using. If you don't know what Snapchat is, join us. It is that really cute social media with a little ghost on a yellow disc. That's the app. And it's all those cute filters that everyone uses with like a little puppy dog face, and you open your mouth and a tongue falls out, or the deer, and you have like cute little, all these really cute filters. That's Snapchat. And Snapchat is really famous with teens, really popular, because you take a picture of yourself called a snap and you send it to somebody, and it only exists for 10 seconds, which is a really good way to send each other racy photos. It will also alert you if the person you send it to takes a screenshot of it. So it sounds like a great idea. This is a way for me to send my boyfriend a nude photo because it only lasts for 10 seconds. But the reality is, once you send something out into the interwebs, it lasts forever. And we all know that because there's a server somewhere owned by Snapchat. So that thing is stored somewhere. And if you are a 16-year-old girl sending your 18-year-old boyfriend something, and he screenshots it and then shows his friend, who happens to be 17, and your son is the 18-year-old, your son has just distributed child pornography. And that's how it happens. It's important to understand the laws of your state. They're different everywhere. You got to know the age of consent. You've got to know the definition of child pornography and what distribution of child pornography is in your state. What is the difference between sending and receiving, including sexting and texting? Does the language matter? You need to know the age of prosecution. The federal laws say you're not protected under the First Amendment for child pornography. Doesn't matter. Are there implied rules? In North Carolina, if the age is implied to be under 18, for example, if somebody is sending someone a video of hot teen girls, that is child pornography, whether the girls are 24 or not. And I don't know is not a defense. So you can find this information for your state on findlaw.com. They have basic information. I encourage every parent of every teenager to go on your state on findlaw.com, look up your child pornography laws, read them, figure them out, and talk to your kids about them, because it takes half a second for your kid to make a mistake. For some people in some states, the age of consent is 16, which means that, but sometimes it's 18. It depends from state to state, but you should still know, and your child needs to be educated about, when are they breaking a law? That's really important, because they are, sending each other pictures. That happens all the time. Okay, we do have to talk about what porn is teaching our kids, and this is where the education comes in. So instead of just blockers and just kind of saying, this will fix it, because it doesn't always work. Your children will find a way around the blockers. They always do. We put every blocker I could think of on one of my 16-year-old clients' phone, turned it into what I thought was a brick. The only thing he had on his phone was his banking app. And he accessed pornography by going on his banking app and using their Facebook link to somehow get on there. And it's very complicated, but he did it. So they're really smart. So instead of,
and it's almost like gaming for them.
Oh, it's so fun.
I mean, I've talked to a number of people, and it's part of the gaming is, can I get past this and figure it out? So that is very enticing.
Oh, it's so exciting. They think it's so fun, and they tell their friends how to do it, and they become really popular. Oh, here's how you can get around this. Yeah, it's really fun for them. How do I get around this? It is like gaming, and it gives them that dopamine rush. Okay, so what we need to do is talk to our kids about what is, pornography teaching you, and why don't we want you to watch it. So one of the most important things about this is like, this isn't real. Like, this isn't what it actually looks like. These are actors. This isn't what sex is actually like. Like, these people don't actually love each other. When we explain sex to our kids and we sit down and have that talk with them, we usually start it off with, when a person loves another person, when a mommy and a daddy, we do these like very beautiful, sweet stories because, usually we're explaining it when like a mom gets pregnant or something. We have to explain a mom, a baby in our belly or something like that. When they ask, how did the baby get in there? So we start off, when people love one another. But porn, someone orders a pizza and then they're having sex on a table, and it doesn't work like that. So we have to explain, this isn't what happens. That's not what it's like. There's no intimacy. And we have to explain to them that, by the way, when women resist and say no, that's not consent. They're not giving consent. Because in porn, women say no all the time, and it continues because it's porn. So porn is teaching our kids that women will always enjoy it, and men, even if they resist or don't consent. Porn also teaches kids, again, that every interaction with a man or a woman should or could end in sex. Like, no one watches porn for the storyline. So kids are seeing two people interact or more, interact, and it's like, oh, again, like did someone call for a plumber? Sex. That's not what's supposed to happen. But kids really do think that, I go out on a date and sex happens. Pornography changes our children's brain and their understanding of communication and relationships. It also teaches them using sexually provocative language is totally appropriate. Seriously, that forcing sex by holding someone down or restraining them is okay, even if they resist or say no. That women and men should look like porn stars. That's what we're supposed to look like. A lot of body image issues. That you can make great money by selling photos or videos of harmless fetishes like feet. That's a newer thing I've run into, is that I had some girls selling pictures of their feet, making a lot of money. Parents could not figure out why their girls suddenly had thousands of dollars at their disposal, and they were selling pictures to fetish sites and videos of their feet. The problem with that is that eventually it escalates to more than feet. And if they want to keep making money, they have to do other things. Webcams are very popular, and boys and girls are making money doing things. Webcamming is when you either live stream and people on the internet ask you to do things and you do, and you can make a certain amount of money, or you are pre-hooked up with somebody else and arrange for things to happen and you make money. But teens are figuring out this makes you a lot of money. So they're monetizing their activity online. That's starting to ramp up. But harmless fetishes, like, oh, it's just my feet, I don't care. Well, eventually it may not be your feet. And eventually someone may ask for your underpants. So it gets really not okay for these girls really fast, but they're already in it and they don't know how to get out of it. So it gets scary, and no one's talked to them about this before.
Well, and it's just one more step. So, it's my feet now, it's the next thing. So it isn't like from 0 to 100. It's like, well, it's just a little bit more. It's just a little bit more. But yeah, I often hear people, who come to treatment, and it's, cam girls and boys, and they've, spent a fair amount of money on that. So yeah, somebody is on the other end making money, but at what cost. The other thing I was thinking about while you're talking too is, you know, yes, it gives this distorted image of what sex is, you know, and it's body parts, and, you know, that girls respond in 30 seconds and there's no, you know, there's no foreplay or whatever. And, you know, a doggy position because it's the most, you know, I mean, so it's all of these things, but the girls are watching the porn too. So if you think your girls aren't watching it, they are.
Oh no, girls are just, this is all kids, girls, boys. And by the way, girls are retaining their virginity. This is very common. Girls are, you know, if you ask your daughters if they're still virgins, they will tell you yes, because they are vaginally, but girls are now absolutely comfortable, a lot of them, having anal sex because that's not taking my virginity. So virginity is defined very differently nowadays. And it sounds really horrifying. And I was shocked when I first heard it too. And absolutely, I mean, the first time I heard it, I was pretty floored too, but this is now kind of common for me to hear. So we have to start talking to our kids like, that's sex. Sex is sex. If you know, oral sex is sex. We have to talk to them about, this is this is intimacy. This is about connection. We treat sex like it's some sort of dirty, awful thing. And we don't talk to our children about all the other things that happen. Tammy, what you were talking about, how things escalate. We have to talk to our kids about having a plan. What do you do if somebody asks you to flash your breasts or show your penis? How do you handle that? It happens all the time on chat rooms. And kids just, they don't know what to do. And they're either frozen, or they think that, well, this is somebody who's my friend. And then someone takes a snap picture of it, a screenshot. And I was giving a presentation and somebody said, well, do your kids? Yes, my children know exactly what to do, how to report it, to come tell me. Somebody just asked me, like, I got their number, I have their, you know, their internet exchange, their IP number. They know exactly what to do, and they'd already reported it to the FBI by the time I even got involved. My kids have a plan, and we have made a plan. This is what you do if this happens. You report it to the site, you report it to this. And I was really proud of her. She was 14, and someone asked her that. She was horrified, but she had a plan. And if it happens to one of her friends, she has a plan to help them. So it's important we have these conversations because it happens all the time. And we can't just like, oh, well, she has blockers. The blockers don't help, because this is happening on sites like Barbie games. This is happening on site because, you know, there aren't just kids on these games. There are all kinds of people on these games. So YouTube doesn't, you know, who's blocked YouTube? This happens all the time. Porn also, it's really important to understand that porn creates the idea of like a rape culture in our society, which is really important. It desensitizes people to the ideas, again, that we were talking about with that men and women are objects versus people. A good example of that is Brock Turner, the Stanford student who was raping a girl, and he didn't really understand what he had done wrong. He was a Stanford swimmer, and he was one of the good kids, Ivy League, and he raped a girl behind a dumpster violently, and he had no idea what he had done wrong. He couldn't figure it out, and he just didn't. He thought violence was normal. He thought it was excusable. He treated women as less than, and he had no idea why that wasn't okay. So it perpetuates this idea of a rape culture. Okay, so what you guys have been waiting for, how do you help your kid? I could say monitor the screen time. Of course, we're all monitoring our screen time, like YouTube, the smart TV, things you're not thinking about, movie channels, Netflix and Hulu. There's some porny stuff on there. Kindle Fires, social media, Instagram, monitor it. Like Instagram doesn't have, sometimes it does, but it doesn't have like actual porn, but it's got some really racy photos on there. Really, really racy. And to a 12 or 13-year-old boy, that's porn. Monitor their texts and their chats, because sexting and texting stuff, as far as I'm concerned, that might as well be porn. And they're sharing videos and pictures and that. So sexting and texting, again, you got to know the laws in your state. They can be breaking the law. They can be just doing things that you know your kids shouldn't be doing. And I'm just chatting with my friends, and meanwhile they're planning a threesome. Happens all the time. Um, as parents, something we have to take responsibility for. And this is where my parent sessions come in. We have to model good behavior. Now, well, I don't watch it. I know, but your kids are seeing everything they see everything we do. If we're drinking regularly, if we're smoking, if we're, even kind of talking about drugs or joking about it, if we're talking about sex in a joking way, making comments, objectifying other people like, oh, look at that hot chick, son or daughter or whatever. If we're watching movies that present, have sex scenes in it, even if it's on in the background, your kids do see it. If you are watching pornography, if you think your kids don't know what you're watching, and oh no, I'm doing it in a closed room, all of my
Michelle, you froze. So when you come back,
all their parents watching
wait,
porn.
you just froze up. So start
Oh,
at so good.
which
We're
part?
having a little bit of unstable, but if you think you're
No.
behind closed doors, so start from there.
From which part? From if you think
You're doing it behind closed doors and you think,
oh, if you're watching porn and you think you're doing it behind closed doors and your kids don't see it, most of my clients who are sex addicts, who I'm treating for sex and porn addiction, they report that they saw their parents watching porn, that observing their parents watching porn is part of their trauma, and
wow.
that their parents had no idea. They would, they thought they were hiding it really well, and that they would also go on their parents' computers.
So one of the questions, yeah, well, your audio continued. So one of the questions is, if my husband is a sex addict, is my gaming child more likely to have addictive behavior? And I'm thinking immediately, gaming is like when I start talking to people about their behaviors, like I even ask, gaming, food, whatever, like I'm asking about all of those things. And so often they're like nodding their head going, yeah, I do all of those, and so to me, I'd be looking at all of that. But what are your thoughts?
So if addiction in your family, we know that there's a part of addiction is it can be genetic. So if there is addiction in the family already, we know that yes, any addiction, it's not just substance abuse. Addiction is addiction, and it's a biopsychosocial model. So the environment. So if your son is has been in an environment where addiction is present, I would be more aware. But I think it's not just that. I think whether there's addiction present or not, being aware of the gaming is a good idea. I think that either or, addiction has to start somewhere. And usually what I find in clients that say, I don't have any addiction in my family, once I do a timeline with them way back somewhere, there's usually addiction somewhere. They just didn't understand that's what it was. I haven't met a family yet that doesn't have something somewhere. So there's usually a little behavior somewhere, and I would be hyper aware of the gaming. If your kid's gaming a lot, if you have to ask, my kid games a lot, this might be an issue. It's probably something to watch. I would watch it. I would ask to see what he's doing. I would watch him game. That's kind of what I'm coming to is how do we start interacting with our kids? So we have to, again, you can do the software that blocks the stuff, but that's fine. There's like Covenant Eyes. Disney has one called Circle. Bark is great for younger kids, but kids also know ways to search not using they all use words. So if you're using these words, it'll block those words. My adult clients can get around these, including Covenant Eyes, if they want to. Kids can certainly do it as well. I suggest checking your children's devices, saying, well, I don't want to invade their privacy. I understand. ask your child, hey, can I see that? Can I see what you're texting? Can I watch you game for a bit? How is their behavior when you ask if I can watch a game? Do they seem like they're shutting down and hiding something? That's a red flag. I would go with that. Most importantly, talk to them, ask them what they're watching, play the games with them, meet their online friends, FaceTime with those parents of their friends, get to know their world, ask them what this stands for. What does that mean? How do you do that? Get into their world more, interact with your kids. Have conversations appropriately, obviously, age appropriate conversations about uncomfortable things. You need to talk to your children about sex and pornography. There's nothing wrong with that.
And way younger than you think you need to.
And most people are like, oh God, I can't have that conversation. Well, if you're not going to have that conversation, someone else is. Oh, younger than 9, younger than 8, probably around age 5, honestly.
Age appropriate, but yes.
Appropriately. And there are ways to do that. Age appropriate. I don't think you should just start off with, hey, there are people naked on TV. Obviously, it's, hey, what do you think about, I remember, so my daughter, my oldest daughter, when I became pregnant with my second daughter, my internet connection is unstable. But she asked me how the baby got in my tummy, and I said, Mommy and Daddy gave each other a special kiss. Age appropriate. She'll ask what that kiss was later. I can elaborate. Age appropriate, but it gives her like she was 3. She hadn't, but kids are starting to really understand things much more quickly than at her period of life. She's an adult now. So you can say to your kids that are age 10, 11, 12, listen, I need to talk to you about pornography. This is uncomfortable for me. It's going to be uncomfortable for you. We can sit back to back and have this conversation and not look at each other if you want to. But I need you to understand what you're actually seeing. I need you to understand this isn't real. This isn't what happens. This isn't intimacy. These are actors. And have that conversation. Make a plan of what to do if something happens online. Have what I call fire drill plan. Have that plan. Even if it's a kid that asks them to do something uncomfortable. Even if it's not sexual, what do you do if a kid asks you to bully another kid online? What are you going to do about that? Tell the truth to your kids. Instead of taking a moral approach and saying like, pornography is wrong and bad and evil, and even if you believe that, that's okay. We still need teenagers and even younger to understand what it actually is. So they actually know what they're watching. So that they understand when they see it, okay, this isn't real. These are actors. This is actually really terrible acting. And my mom says that these people don't even really like each other in real life, probably. They probably just had a fight and they're getting paid a lot of money to do this. And even
somebody put in the chat, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and their junior version is a good start.
That's a great book. Yes.
Yes, that's great.
Yes, that's a fantastic book. Yes. I have a list of books on my website, lifehealingcounseling.com. There are resources for parents and younger children. So you can go to my website and there is a list of resources. Lots of books. That is one of them on there. It's a fantastic, that's one of my favorite books. So thank you for putting that out there. Also your kids are going to ask you, did you see pornography? You can admit it, that you've seen it, and they're going to say, well, what was that like? I felt a little icky. I mean, I was curious about it. I was about this age. This is how I found it. It was a magazine. I know you guys don't even know what those are anymore, but we used to have these paper books. How did it make you feel? You can have these conversations and be honest. Please use real words. And I know people say this all the time, but this is very important. For some reason, my generation especially, the children of baby boomers, we got into this habit of not using real words with body parts. So we would go into our pediatrician and talk about hoo-hoos and cha-chas. And what happened was children would be using these words to describe themselves, and they would be trying to say something happened to them that wasn't good. And the doctor or the therapist wouldn't understand what they were talking about and totally missed really important information. So please use real words with your kids. There's nothing wrong with using words like penis, vagina, breast, sex, orgasm, masturbation. They're fine. They're real words. We can use them. We're adults. And please teach them the real words. They shouldn't have shame over these parts. It's okay. And it helps them develop a healthy body image. The other thing I will say is that shaming our children around getting aroused when they see porn is probably one of the more damaging things that I see. It's very traumatic for kids. I can't believe you watched this. You're a terrible person. Only bad people. You got off on it. You liked it. It is so shaming, and it can really damage a child. Porn is supposed to arouse. That's what it's made for. So your child probably will get aroused, and that's perfectly normal. There's nothing, that's its purpose. Your teen is obviously looking for something, information probably. So provide it for them. If you don't provide it, someone else is going to, or they're going to find it themselves. But punishing them and scolding them and shaming them for looking at things that they don't understand and doing it, and being ashamed of it, it doesn't help. It's better to explain what they're actually watching. If you have that horrible moment that every parent kind of has this nightmare about catching your kid masturbating, that's kind of like, what happens if I catch them? You may. If you do, I kind of recommend just closing the door quietly, and it's very awkward for everybody, and just kind of allowing everybody to collect themselves, and then say, listen, nothing wrong with what you're doing. It's a normal, healthy part of being a human being. But I need to talk to you about what you were watching, and then have that conversation. If for some reason your child does develop an addiction around this, please don't punish your child. Addiction is a brain disease. Any addiction, it's a brain disease. You would never punish a child for having cancer or diabetes. So don't punish a child for having addiction. This is not something evil, or teaching somebody you're evil, you're bad. It's very traumatic. And when parents teach children that they are evil or bad, it traumatizes them and creates unhealthy coping skills, usually more porn. And that stems from these negative thoughts and feelings about how they feel about themselves. And those are called core beliefs. What I treat ultimately to help heal addiction is unhealthy core beliefs. It actually can create an addiction or make it more powerful. Sex and masturbation are healthy, normal parts of being a human being, but obviously we want our children to, be fully developed adults and understand what's happening and do this in a way that's healthy and within our morals and values. So we have to understand that pornography takes that intimacy and connection that makes sex healthy away. That's what we're trying to teach them. So ask for help and support. It's fine to say, hey, there are things I'm embarrassed to talk to you about, and I find it really hard and it's awkward. So maybe we should find somebody to help us talk about it, and find somebody to help you talk about it. Find a therapist, find a CSAT. Get that professional help. If your child does have an addiction or you suspect it, there are people qualified to test and assess for that. Make sure your person that you find is qualified to assess and test for that. Not everybody is. If they aren't, that's okay. Look for resources. There are, again, I have resources on my website, lifehealingcounseling.com. Sex and Relationship Healing.com has on their website. So make sure you're getting the right information and you're not just kind of Googling it, because there's a whole lot of stuff that's not accurate, and that stuff can be really dangerous. Let's see. What else is there?
Well, a couple of things.
Okay.
You said if your kids, and I was like, when your kids, because
Yeah, good
I
point.
remember my daughter was in middle school and she's in her 30s now. So, and she's like, Mom, she knew she wanted to go to college. She was excited about going to college. She was like, I don't know, 13. And she was like, she was on the college path. Great kid. But she was Googling because she got a message, and this is, years ago,
Mhm.
and she got a message about, uh, um, do you want to see a girls' college dorm room? Well, of course she did. She wanted to see what she was going to be, moving into. And then like the look on her face, Mom, she was just, and like I still remember that, 20 years later. But and I said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry that happened. I gave her a hug and I said, it's okay. You didn't do anything wrong. You were looking for information. So, and the
And they
misspelled
are.
words, yeah, the misspelled words. I've had, different. There
Fun.
was cat is like kitty or whatever, like, and woof, went on
Mhm.
down. So they will hit
Oh,
this stuff. It's not if,
yeah.
it's when. So having a plan,
When
is really
I
important.
had a father call me, his 5-year-old was doing some sort of, they had to pick some sort of like corporation or company, and his 5-year-old was into sports. And guess what company she wanted to do a project on? Dick's.
Oh,
It was
Dick's Sporting
awful.
Goods. Yeah.
So, I mean, poor thing. And he was horrified and frantic, brought her in, and we had a conversation. I'm like, do you understand what you saw? And I can't believe this. I said, it's okay. Let's explain to her what she really saw and how this is not, that she didn't do anything wrong. It's okay. The child was traumatized, the dad was traumatized, everyone's traumatized. But once we talked about it, and this poor 5-year-old, like, she didn't need to see that, but she understood that that's not something she should see until she's much older. There was nothing wrong with what she saw. What she saw wasn't evil or bad. This is a part of a human being, and 5-year-olds shouldn't see that. That's not
Right.
appropriate.
Right.
And this is not okay for her to see right now. And one day when she's a grown person, and if she wants, one day
If she wants to make a choice on that, yes.
right.
Yeah.
And we had this whole conversation, and just talking to her about it and just having these kind of conversations and letting her ask questions. And she had a lot of questions. Why did it do? What did it look? Why does this? How did this? Just answering these questions for her, and her dad was just couldn't believe it. But just answering the questions about what she saw specifically, really, she just really couldn't have cared less after that. She was like,
Yeah.
okay, and walked out and was like, okay, let's go play soccer.
Yeah.
Fine. And
So
it was powerful. Yeah.
we have another question. So, what is your viewpoint on educating your children on sex addiction when their parent is an addict?
It depends on the age of the kid, I think, for sure. I think that, we talk about this actually a lot in the CSAT community, and there are a lot of resources available on my site and on sex and relationship healing about talking to your children about this. But I think it's absolutely has to be age appropriate. I think I don't think any child of any age really needs to ever know any details. I also think that being honest to a point with adult children is important for recovery. But at the same time, they're still your children. So I think it's something to really discuss with your therapist, as well. It depends on every situation, and every couple is so different. But do I think you should be telling your 5-year-old, hey, mom or dad is a sex addict? Yeah, no, I don't think they have any business.
Even adult
Even
children.
adult,
I mean,
yeah,
who wants to know about their parents' sex life? So I think
no,
having an education about addiction and compulsive behavior, and then within the family structure, it's like, mom and dad are struggling. We're working on it.
they don't
If
know
the kid
any
has
details
figured it
ever.
out,
Yeah.
yeah. But
There's a big
I
difference between understanding sex addiction and putting it in context of if there's infidelity versus just, mom or dad had 40.
yes.
It depends on every couple. And I definitely think that's something to discuss with your specific therapist, because every family structure is so different, and it depends on so many factors. So
Yeah. And I think if you are worried about your kids having some compulsive sexual behavior, absolutely, giving them an education of here's what some problems are. But to have it be pointed back at dad or mom,
no,
problematic, traumatic, all of that, they just don't need to know, even as adult children. But
we
eventually, when some people are in more recovery. So
yeah.
okay. Oh, we're out of time, but let's see. Okay, it's more what you meant about this isn't something you should have seen until you're much older. So
Oh,
somebody's asking
it was a
about.
girl. Oh, I was
Okay.
saying, okay, so what I was saying was the little 5-year-old girl that had come across multiple pictures of men's penises because she had been researching Dick's, the sporting goods store. So when we talked to her, it was important for her dad that she understood that this isn't something she should come across, and that it wasn't okay for her to see a bunch of pictures of penises. And I agree with that. I don't think 5-year-olds should be just seeing a bunch of penises. So for her, I said, if, when she's older, if she wants to, when she's a grown up woman, and she can make a choice if she would like to one day look at some, like a grown person, a grown adult with their, prefrontal cortex developed, can make their own decisions, right? I don't have I'm not going to judge this 5-year-old's decision, but for right now, she doesn't need to see that. So that's kind of, the other one is, when is a healthy age to watch people have sex? I think that depends on a person. I don't really have an opinion on that. I don't know.
When they're an adult, if they choose
When
to
they're
do that,
a grown
they're more. But
adult
we talk about it all the
person,
time. It's traumatic to young brains that aren't fully
absolutely.
developed, and so it's highly problematic. So
Yeah.
a healthy age. I mean, like, this feels a little bit like
I
some
think that's
people
very
choose never
personal.
to choose
It's
never to do
individual.
that. So yeah,
I
so
mean, there's no
so
like general, like a lot of these questions, it's things that we're so individualized as people that this is, there's no general answer for a lot of these questions. It's
But an
really individual.
unhealthy age is 5 years old, 9 years old, 12 years
Absolutely.
old. All of those
Oh,
are really
yeah.
unhealthy, and
Really,
unfortunately, can really be problematic in their development. So while I don't know what the magic healthy age is, but I know for sure, because we answer the phones.
25, our brains are developed, but I mean, it depends on the person, right? Some kids are more mature than others. And
Yes.
some kids at 25, there could be underlying other things going on. So it really depends on the
I know
person.
some very immature 30-year-olds.
Me
So,
too.
so we are out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today for this special edition. And Michelle, thank you for this wealth of information.
Thank you.
This will be available on YouTube, so we'll get this posted, if not today, tomorrow, so that this resource will be out there among the good resources to help educate parents and grandparents and people about about what is going to be healthy, what they need to know, and how to help their kids as they move forward. So thank you. Thanks, everybody.